Welcome back, everybody, to another Two Tamers Talk. This is a special presentation. We had to get one in early because our boy Basil over here won an Ultimate Cup.
I did it, finally.
Said he was going to do the thing, and he did the thing. Now let's get into the deck list and all that, all the bolts and nuts and all that stuff later. Let's talk about your Ultimate Cup progression, because you've been working on these.
Yeah.
With the last format, you did the monocolor one. How many did you do? At least 3 or 4.
I think 4 or 5.
Yeah, of the monocolor.
Of the monocolor.
Yeah. And you did pretty well in some of those, right?
I did well in 2 of them.
Uh-huh.
2 of my showings with Bloom were X2.
Okay.
And then I tried Mirage and got crushed. I tried Yellow Hybrids and got crushed.
Mm-hmm.
And then in one of the other ones, I played the War Gray Dobrik thing,
Mm-hmm.
and also got crushed.
Well, I remember you've been dedicated to these. I remember as soon as they announced this format, within 24 hours, you had a card list of every card you could possibly play in this format.
In the new one.
Yeah.
So the new one was announced, and I've said this once before about the other Ultimate Cup format, is that it was kind of annoying because some decks were still at full power.
Uh-huh.
Like in the first series, Machine Dramon dominated.
Yeah.
Red Hybrids was only missing a few cards. Bloom Lord only missing a few cards. Mirage was missing no cards.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. So the last format, it was pretty clear cut. Like,
Well, they didn't.
What you
they
could
did
play.
a restriction like mid
Yeah,
Ultimate Cup series and monocolor stuff,
in the
right?
first set of them, it was basically like a suspect test for Promo Grand Quagamon, Weregurumon,
Analog Man.
Analog Man,
Yep.
and Chaos Dag.
Yeah.
And so there were a lot of decks that they were like, we know these are going to be strong. We don't want people playing these.
Yeah.
It was like, okay, that's fair. But once that restriction was in place, it was pretty much clear which decks were the best.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing about this format is it was super unclear what was going to be the best.
Yeah. Because
People
you had just bits and pieces. You had everything that was new and like 10% of old stuff.
Yeah. And so people's immediate reaction was to just play either Greymon or Lugarmon.
Yeah.
Because the Greymon, there was obviously a line in BT14, but it also had the most relevant promo cards. Had the starter deck, it had the BT12 War Gray, it had the BT12 Greymon and Agumon.
Yeah.
The Security Attack Greymon was in the RB set, as well as the tie, the BT1 tie. They just had a lot of cards.
Yeah.
The Greymon X was Winner's Pack pre-release.
Well, anytime you see Greymon, you're like, oh, that has to be the one. That's got to be the way, right?
And then Lugarmon is basically self-contained within the BT14 set.
Yeah, minus the Rush Gatomon. Which you don't get, right?
You don't get the Rush Gatomon. But that's part of the thing. The more you look at it, you're like, oh, Lugarmon's kind of hard to play because you don't have Miss Boost or Analog Youth or Chimeramon, which are all really important cards in that strategy. So basically, it was kind of open season for deck builders.
Yeah.
You could really get pretty creative.
Which I think is great for the game.
Yeah, it was cool because
got all those hamsters running in people's brains.
Yeah. And so like we'll talk about it more when we get into my matches, but Justin and I's first attempt, we were playing a Louis Ukomon Rookie Rush
Yeah,
deck
you did all the movie promo stuff.
Yeah, in blue. And that deck I think was really good. Justin went 10th in the week prior. But I did not. And so I was like, I think this deck is good, but let me get back to my roots.
Yeah.
Let me go green. And so I ended up putting together the Dezbitmon list, and it ended up being a good meta call.
Now, how different was that list from the Dezbitmon list that you had built that wasn't in the restricted format?
Yeah. Basically, you lose all of your level 4s and 5s that aren't in the RB set.
Okay.
You do have the promo Angoromon, which is one of the really good ones, but I ended up not even playing it just because I had different options. And then I didn't play the promo Angoromon either, or the promo Dezbitmon. I opted for some other options in the level 6 slot. And then obviously I added 4 training
Right.
in addition to the 4 boost.
Faster.
Which ended up being really nice.
Cool.
The deck, the sort of strategy of the deck, it was a very wide format because there were not a lot of responses to wide formats.
Yeah.
You didn't have some of the obvious things you think about with Death X and Crimson Blaze and Shine Greymon, Ruin Mode, and DG Dimension. Like, all these cards are just not legal.
Yeah.
And so there's in the open format, you think, well, if I play out 3 rookies, they're probably going to die.
Yeah.
But in this format, you could really stick a lot of Digimon. And so that's why I was thinking, Dire Bitmon is going to be really good because they're just going to have all these Digimon, and I'm just going to pick them off one at a time.
Yeah.
And I ended up going with that, and it ended up working out.
Yeah. So this was your second Ultimate Cup of this format?
Yeah. There were only 3 in this format, and I signed up for 1 back-to-back weekends.
Okay. And so you figure you learned a lot from the first one as far as what matchups are going to look like? Because you guys had no idea going into the first one. It was kind of a Wild West.
No, we were, and that's sort of the reason why we leaned on that blue deck, is we predicted a lot of Greymon and Lugermon.
Yeah.
Single stack decks that obviously are a lot slower than they used to be. So our idea was to bait them out of the raising with a bunch of rookies, and then they maybe deal with 1 or 2. And then promote, and you either go Ikakumon or Gesomon to strip sources, and then use Zudo Ace to bounce it. And then from there, it was really hard to recover. What we did not expect was everyone else was also thinking that. So blue was kind of the dominant color in that format.
Because the first one, it was like a Plesiomonn deck that won, right?
Plesiomonn. We're basically the same exact deck, but replace Louis Ukumon with Joe and Plesiomon.
Oh, okay.
And then that deck ended up winning, which I think influenced a lot of people in that direction because blue was super popular. And even people were playing Louis Ukumon with no level 6s.
Yeah.
That was also a popular strategy. And then the other 2 decks that I didn't think people were going to play a lot of, one was Yellow Vaccine with Goldramon top end.
Right.
Not a lot of outs to a level 6 and 2 6K Digimon without levels. Those were really hard to deal with in that format.
That also created a lot of ties, though.
Yeah, and then the other deck was D Brigade with Aliens.
Yeah.
That was the other super popular deck. And again, something it spits out a lot of bodies and has this big boss that you can't really deal with.
Yeah.
And those decks were tying a bunch, facing each other,
right?
Because it was basically a Brigadramon staring at a Goldramon, and neither of them could do anything.
Yeah.
So basically, I absorbed all of this information in the first week and thought, I need something with 15k and piercing that can swing at these boss monsters.
Yeah.
And so that's what I ended up bringing.
And you get to trash security too, right?
If I have the Lamortmon or the Rust Tyrannomon Ace.
Yeah, let's jump into your list because I have it here. So I was looking over this and I was like, man, because you get to play your Floodgates because they reprinted the Terriermon.
Yep, Terriermon was in the RB set.
That's Christmas for you.
I love that. It was amazing.
The immediate thing that popped out at me is the Nidhoggmon because I'm an OG player.
Yes.
And so seeing that thing revived,
Nidhogg put in some work.
So
the immediate thought was, well, I can have basically 7 Dire Bitmons if I wanted. I could play the 3 promo and then the 4 RB1. But the more I thought about it, I the whole deck had to move away from the tribal aspect.
Okay.
Because I only have 1 Simbar and Goromon and only have 1 Lamortmon.
Yeah.
So based off of that, I sort of need to adjust my strategy and how the deck is built. So I took out the promo Ruli, which is the 3K DP. Right. And then I obviously had to replace the 4s and 5s. And when you look at the 4s and 5s, green cards that are legal in this format, you basically have nothing.
The ace cards. And that's about it.
Well, in the 4 slot, there was some insect support, and those cards were not very good.
Yeah.
They're like the level 4 in specifically, I don't think is very good. It will be good later in the insect support because it has play bugs by effect and then suspend stuff and do a bunch of cool stuff. But in this specific strategy, there was no use for it. But the Togemon is amazing.
Yeah, play the Tamers for
I think the
cheap,
Togemon goes in any green deck, basically. Play a Setter Mimi for 1, play a Ruli for 0.
Yeah.
It's very, very good. And then reprinted in the RB set was Weedmon.
Yep.
And I was
OG
like,
Turbo.
Weedmon was a card that I played a lot in Bloomlord because there was a 3K vegetation and a 1 to Evo. Before we had level 4s that do any effects, we had 4s that costed 1 to Evo.
Yeah.
And it just so happened that Weedmon's partner in crime, Nidhogg, was also
right there
in the set. The interesting thing about Nidhogg was a lot of the Rookie Rush decks that were pretty popular just left 4 suspended rookies on the board.
Bye-bye.
And if you could get up into Nidhogg, they were all going to go away, which was very nice in this deck. The other things that were really good, I think that SR Palmon I've really come to love.
Extend your turn a lot.
I really like it in the Rosemon deck because you're always going to be suspending something on your way up to Rosemon. I really like it in Bloomlord because if I can go up into Lily Ace or into play the EX3 Pomu and then suspend something, that just going to make my line that much cheaper. But in this deck, if I promote the promo or the SR Palmon, I Evo the Simbar and Goromon, and then Evo the Lamortmon on top of that. The Lamortmon is going to suspend something because it has a card with Angoromon in sources, so it's going to give me that 2 memory. So there were a lot of times where I was going from 3 to 6 in one turn with that Palmon.
Gotcha.
So that was really nice.
It was also very nice of them to reprint HPD for you.
Yeah, that was the other thing is we have 2 restricted cards. We have the Blossomon was in the RB set as well as HPD. And then the level 5s were actually the easiest part because I took out the BT13 Lamortmon and replaced it with 2 Lily Ace and 1 Blossomon.
Easy.
I think Lily Ace was really good in this format.
Did you burst a lot?
Yeah, you were able
or not
to
burst, but,
counter.
Yeah.
You're able to counter a bunch, especially some of the. We'll talk about matchups later, but I played against Imperial Dramon a lot. That was another deck that was super popular. And if they were trying to get an extra check or swing over something with like an XV with jamming from the Bukamon, and then they were going to get countered, and then that's really hard to recover from.
Right.
And I think the level 5s were really good in this list. And then the 6s, like I said, I have the Dezbitmon, and then Rust Tyrannomon Ace and the Nidhogg. The only worry I had on that was a lot of these decks have access to a level 7 top end, which was really hard to deal with. Wargrey and other red decks have Blitz Omni.
Yeah.
The blue decks were playing Blitz Omni, which normally you think of Blitz Omni as kind of like Blitz for game, but a lot of people were just using it as like a level 7 with 14k and bouncing bottom deck protection.
Yeah. You can put it on top of the Pleziomon.
The black deck obviously was playing Zwart and Zwart Defeat.
Ooh, so you had to worry about the defeats out of security.
Yeah,
for sure.
you had to worry about that too in the black decks. And then so that was a consideration. But then the rest of the deck building was easy. You put in 4 of the Ruli, 2 of the Setter Mimi, and then 4 boost and 4 training.
4 boost, 4 training is crazy.
Yeah,
just had to add tons of consistency.
It basically made it so that in a lot of my matchups, I would get to like a 3 or 4 in the raising, and then just as they were kind of setting up their stuff, I could just play training boost, or training Mimi, or boost Ruli, or whatever the case, and it really puts a lot of pressure on them.
Yeah. Well, the thing I found a lot is that when you run 4 and 4 like that in a deck, it almost, I don't want to say it turns your deck into a security control deck, but if they don't finish you off, a lot of times
they're going to set you up
to win.
Yeah.
So
and the interesting thing about the format was it was slow. So if if they're set up with 2 boosts and 2 tamers, and they promote, they're not going to get through 6 security. No. Whereas in open format, they very well might.
Yeah.
And so the Dezbitmon sort of response to that was a lot stronger than decks could be prepared for.
Yeah, it's a big blocker.
It is a big blocker.
Yeah. Well, let's go through your matchups because I know you did make a comment that most people were not ready for
no
Dezbitmon.
Yeah, it's true. So the first matchup was a red Rookie Rush deck.
Okay.
They were kind of playing the Koromon and Agumon bottom end. They were playing Louis Ukomon. Then they were also playing Sukamon to Magna Ace.
Oh.
Okay. And then Greymon Ace, and then just sort of try and overwhelm your opponent before they could get to anything. The problem with that is, of course, they were playing a bunch of Digimon that slowly got swung at one at a time.
Yeah.
So I was able to win that 2-0. My second match was versus Imperial Dramon. I don't think he's watching this, but it was Avault, which I'm sure
nice. I watched it.
I'm sure the viewers have seen it. It's on his stream. He was playing Imperial Dramon. And the only reason I knew that before the match is because I'd gotten the subscribe notification with a giant pale Dramon Ultimate Cup, and I was like, I wonder what he's playing.
Yeah.
But that matchup is miserable for the opponent. That deck, specifically in this format, has no out to a 13k blocker.
Yeah.
Just period.
Yeah.
There's nothing it can do. It has no Megadeth. It has no old fighter mode.
Mm-hmm.
There's just nothing it can do. There were a lot of times where the main strategy of that deck in this format was to swing pale, and then pass your turn somehow.
Mm-hmm.
And then when they tried to deal with the pale, you Dragon Mode Ace.
Yeah.
And then that was your strategy. But the Dezbitmon gets bigger than Dragon Mode Ace.
Mm-hmm.
So you could swing over it, and then even if they aced, it would be suspended. But then you can unsuspend with the Ruli, and then just keep attacking them from there.
Keep going.
So there was basically no way for them to win in that matchup, specifically because their only removal is Kakaitis Breath.
Yeah.
And putting a Dezbitmon back in my hand, I'm just going to get right back to it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Especially with all the trainings and all the boosts.
Mm-hmm. My matchup after that was Gammamon.
Ooh, okay.
And the Gammamon deck, I was actually pretty comfortable versus in open format.
Yeah.
It was one of those things where when I first started playing it, I was like, oh, Dezbitmon, it's the green deck, whatever. It's probably the worst one.
Yeah.
But then after playing against Gammamon, I was like,
Gammamon's clearly the worst one.
I think Gammamon is not very good.
Yeah.
And especially because they don't have the ability to play offense training or red boost.
Yeah,
because their deck is purple, blue, and green as well.
Yeah.
And so, it was basically the same story of he promotes his Gammamon stack and goes into Arcturusmon and Proximamon, and then, does 3 checks, and then I clear his board.
Goes into what you say all the time. They need a Gammamon memory boost.
Yeah, for sure. So that was my third round. The round after that was another Imperial player.
Yeah.
And it was the same. It was the same story.
Predicament. Yeah.
The interesting thing about some of these later rounds is people would swing when I had a Dezbitmon on the field, and I would block, and they're like, "Wait, what gives it blocker?"
Its face.
And I was like, "It says blocker on the card," which is how you know it has blocker. That was another thing.
I'm sure you said it nicer than that.
I did. I said
you are a very kind man.
I try not to be so snarky. Yeah. But I was talking with Justin. He's like, dude, I couldn't tell you what Dezbitmon's effect is.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, so that's sort of the benefit of playing a deck that was not necessarily the most popular, is people were just not able to play around it as effectively. So I did win a game that I probably shouldn't have, just because he tried to get an extra swing with Pale Dramon.
Yeah.
And then he died, obviously, to the 13k blocker. That's the other thing that people didn't realize, is that the RB1 DP buffs are all turns.
Yeah.
So a lot of the times it was a 14k blocker, which
Big rabbit.
in the format is
huge.
not easy to get over. So I won that one. Then my round 5 was the biggest sweat of the tournament.
Okay.
It was versus Jellymon.
Oh, okay.
And the interesting thing
another RB1 opponent.
Another RB1 opponent. The interesting thing about the Jellymon deck is it's very memory efficient as well,
Mm-hmm.
and it has obviously two Kyoshiros, the promo and the RB1.
Mm-hmm.
It has basically the same amount of support as the Angoromon deck does. But what it has is
Pseudomon Ace.
It has Pseudomon
Yeah.
Ace and Ikakumon,
Yeah.
which are just generically good blue cards in
Yeah.
any deck that strips sources.
Yeah.
So it was a lot of source strip and a lot of bottom deck, which was very troublesome. As well as the Amphimon gains protection from battle specifically.
Yeah.
So another necessary counter to the Dezbitmon deck. Luckily, there was an instance again where my opponent forgot that Dezbitmon was a blocker.
Beautiful.
And swung with the promo Amphimon.
He's only like 11K,
which
right?
is 11K,
Yeah.
and it doesn't have the same battle protection.
Oh, okay.
So that lost him one critical game, and then in the game, I did lose the first game, and then won the second game off of that misplay, and then in game 3, it came down really close. But it came to a situation where he was set up for lethal on the next turn, but gave me just a little bit too much memory, and I was able to go up into Nidhogg and bottom decked his whole board.
Nice.
And then from there, I was able to swing and then Mimi for game.
Did he know what Nidhogg did?
He did, yeah.
Okay.
And so I was able to clutch it out there. And then in round 6,
You're just crossing your fingers hoping for an Imperial
and
matchup?
it was.
Yeah.
The last round was Imperial.
Now, what do you think's different about... Did you see the deck list of the people that you played?
I did not, no.
What do you think's different about the person that made it all the way to the end against you with his Imperial deck?
He was playing Louis Ukomon.
Okay. So a faster version.
Yeah, it was a much more aggressive version. I think the people that were trying to play Imperial Dramon as just Imperial Dramon were really struggling with the fact that they didn't have a dragon mode that wasn't dragon mode Ace.
Yeah.
So they were playing like Davis Ken and the promo Davis and the promo Vmon, which I think were all really good cards in that format. But having the dragon mode Ace compared to either the BT12 dragon mode or the starter deck dragon mode sort of lost them a lot of the offense that Imperial is really known for.
Right.
It did have the BT12 fighter mode, which was a nice top end for them, but it basically couldn't recover if their initial Pale Dramon stack died.
Yeah.
Whereas the person in the finals playing Louis and Ukomon kind of did play the dragon mode Ace and I think 1 or 2 fighter modes. But was mainly focused on that bottom end.
Because they don't get any of the end of turn DNA inheritables, right?
It does. They
It
have
gets
they have the BT12 Vmon and the original starter deck Wormmon, which
Oh,
are
okay.
both end of turn DNA.
Gotcha.
But if you're playing that way, then you can lose out on a lot of the benefits of the deck, like
Swinging with jamming. And,
swinging with
yeah.
jamming, drawing off the Stingmon and stuff like that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, the Stingmon draws you a lot of
The
cards.
Stingmon
Yeah.
does draw a lot of cards. But like I said, if the Pale Dramon wants to swing, but there's a 12K blocker on the field, you're never going to be able to get over it.
Yeah.
So that was sort of the downfall there.
Well, the funny thing is your deck is a natural counter to that, and it's also probably one of the decks that you tested against the most because
'cause of
Justin, buddy
yeah.
from the channel, built a version of that, and that was like his baby, and you guys tested the crap out of it.
Yeah,
So
I
you knew
I
what
was-
all the cards.
I knew what Imperial Dramon
Yeah.
did really well. The one thing I was happy to dodge was Wargrey.
Mhm.
The reason I was really considering putting back in the promo Angoromon and the promo Ruli,
Mhm.
just because the promo Ruli gives you 3K when you attack if your Digimon has Angoromon in its sources, not a card with Angoromon in its text in its sources.
Oh.
So your rookie literally has to be Angoromon, or else the Tamer does nothing.
That's tough.
So it was sort of this calculation of the deck as it stands. It can gain 2K from the Tanamon egg when I suspend a Tamer, which if I'm going into Dezbitmon, I probably have either Mimi or Ruli. So it's going to be at least 14 from the egg, and then 1 from each the Angoromon and the Simbar Angoromon. which means my max DP can be 16k.
Huge.
Which should be good enough to get over everything in the format. Unless they have BT12 Wargrey with either the BT12 Agumon or Greymon, or Structure Deck Tie.
Yeah.
Then I can't get over it. So I was really worried about facing specifically that combination of cards, because I was like, well, I shouldn't change my deck for that one instance.
Deck,
because otherwise I can get over it.
Yeah, we've talked about that for a whole bunch of things. Never change your entire deck for one matchup.
Yeah, and so I was luckily able to dodge Wargrey, but everything else in the format I knew I could swing and pierce over, and then trash security and do everything from there. So that was sort of the tournament run.
That's awesome.
Three Imperial, 1 Gamma, 1 Jelly, and then 1 Red Rookie Rush.
How many participants?
It was exactly 128.
Okay.
So barring any crazy ties, it was going to be 6 rounds at most, no matter what. There was a situation where if we had tied at table 6, there would have been a 7th round. Especially because of the top 10 tables, 5 of them tied in round 6.
Vaccine all day.
So a lot of vaccine, and then that D Brigade Aliens deck was also popular.
Well, how many Ultimate Cups are left in this format?
Goose egg.
0.
There were only the 3.
Oh, that's it.
Yep.
Okay.
There was a very short format. I said on the last Two Tamers talk that Bandai heard the complaints.
Yeah.
People want open format.
And that's what it's going to be.
And there is in February, after EX5 comes out, there's a couple more. If the same format plus EX5, those decks are going to be a lot better.
Is it Ultimate Cup again? With the same restricted format?
It's with this format plus EX5 plus promos
and
tournament
whatever
pack.
we get
in
between them.
Same idea.
Gotcha.
The problem with that is it's basically Melga at full strength.
Yeah.
Because you have the entire Melga starter deck and the entire EX5 Melga line.
And that's in February?
So
even after the new ban list?
Yeah, the new ban list that who knows what it is.
Yeah.
Probably Karur X. But that Ultimate Cup is going to be, I think, a lot more skewed because it has
a clear front runner.
Yeah, I think like the Anubismon deck was another deck that sort of relied on some older stuff.
Yeah.
Specifically Mervamon. And then the other deck is the Devas deck.
Yeah.
Is fully contained in there, as well as the Grace Nova DNA deck.
It's interesting. We'll see how fast that goes.
Yeah, so it'll those 3 decks are all pretty much contained within the format, as well as some Sukamon and Numemon stuff is also in that format from the EX5 deck. So I think it's actually going to be a lot quicker than this one was. But for this specific BT14 RB1 Ultimate Cup, there were just the 3.
That's awesome, man. I'm so happy for you. You guys went into this whole season like we're gonna get top.
We're gonna. The goal was to get a Crimson mode. And we got there.
You got there. It's in the mail. But there we'll do an unboxing. You'll have to check it out on the channel when the prize cards come in, because I can't wait to see the texturing on that thing.
Yeah.
But what's next for you?
Nats. There's no more. The only other regional in this format is another Core TCG Pasadena in-person event, which we are not going to.
Correct.
We're Justin and I and Jacob were all confirmed for nationals.
Nice.
We're just full focused on the EX5 format.
Trying to figure out what you're gonna play.
Yeah, we're gonna test it all out. There's at least 9 decks floating around in my mind of things I could possibly play in that format.
That's a lot to filter through.
Yep, but we'll get there.
We will. Well, guys, once again, congratulations, man. First place.
We did it.
Crazy. Yeah, feel free to check us out. Basil's on all kinds of our podcasts and deck profiles, and we have tons of stuff in the can, ready to post. So stay tuned to the channel. We have all kinds of new stuff coming for you guys. And once again, thank you, Basil. And we'll see you guys in the next one.